Hello everyone and welcome to Dungeons & Death Battles, the series in which we search for the most lethal monsters in all of Dungeons & Dragons. Today we will be smashing our way through Season 4, in which 16 deadly dungeon denizens, as voted on by you incredible arena patrons, will be battling it out to see which one of them is worthy of taking home the CR4 crown. The arena rules are simple, the monsters start 30 feet apart, there is no fleeing the map, victory is achieved by kill only, and outside influence is not allowed. Once again, the door to the arena will be swinging wide open as we greet spectators from far and wide, all of which we've come to bear witness to this evening's grand spectacle as the spite-sworn Shadow Demon takes on the slippery Plasmoid Boss for a shot at treading ever closer to that CR4 crown. As always, pre-battle, the arena teams are preparing their fighters for glorious combat, all while our in-house kobold crew work tirelessly as your enigmatic hosts. While all this prep work is underway, it looks like we have time to jump into a quick combatants analysis. And over in today's blue corner we have the Shadow Demon, an entity that manifests when a demon of great standing is destroyed within its home plane. From that tumultuous death emerges this incorporeal inconvenience, a vengeful, spiteful spirit bent on finding a way to regain its former demonic glory. Perhaps this is indeed why it steps forth into the arena today. But either way, the Shadow Demon comes in with a 66 hit point average and 14 AC, which is backed up by a strong stat spread, which allows for modifiers on both physical and mental saves and abilities. Being an incorporeal spectre, the demon does only have a pitiful 1 in strength, although it does not need to rely on this in combat. The Shadow Demon will be swinging in with its umbral claw attacks, dealing a stacked 3d8 plus 3 points of psychic damage on a strike, all while holding its own with a plethora of resistances, which will allow it to shrug off acid, bludgeoning, cold, fire, lightning, piercing, slashing, and thunder damage, all while also being immune to necrotic and poison damage, as well as the exhaustion, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, and restrained conditions. That being said, the demon is extremely vulnerable to radiant damage, so there is a kink in the Shadow's otherwise extremely tough set of defenses. The Shadow Demon can also use its Shadow Stealth ability to blend into areas of dim light or darkness, can move through objects and creatures using its incorporeal movement, but does find itself suffering from light sensitivity, so we'll be keeping the arena lighting conditions at an optimal balance for today's encounter. And over in the red corner, we are graced by the presence of a Plasmoid Boss, a creature of strength and renown that has been able to rely upon its fluid strategies and strong ability to liquidate its competition. This larger-than-life ooze slides into the arena from beyond the stars with an average hit point pool of 82 and a rather low AC of 11. That being said, the boss does have a similarly stacked stat spread with positive modifiers all round and an emphasis on strength, in which it has a very solid 18. The Plasmoid Boss has resistances to acid and poison damage, with its uncanny dodge ability allowing it to use a reaction to halve the damage from an attack that hits it. This creature is also extremely amorphous and can use this ability to squeeze through spaces as narrow as an inch, with this ability also granting it advantage on checks to initiate or escape from grapples. Unlike the Shadow Demon, the Plasmoid Boss does have a multi-attack and can pile drive in with 3 pseudopod attacks per turn, each dealing 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage on a strike. With all this in mind, the Plasmoid Boss will be looking to take down the Shadow Demon, thus getting it a step closer to that CR4 crown, all while building up even more renown amongst its intergalactic peers. So without further ado, it does look like the crowd, combatants, and kobolds are all ready to rumble, which does mean that it is time to roll for initiative, starting with the Shadow Demon and its +3 modifier. So rolling in right here, Shadow Demon a +3 again, looking to get a high score here to kick things off with, and it has rolled in with a respectable 11, with that +3 modifier bringing that all the way up to a 14. It was a very solid start there from the Shadow Demon, but let's see if the Plasmoid Boss can do anything to best it. So rolling in right here for the Plasmoid. Does have a +1 modifier to this, looking to beat a 14 total. And it has rolled in with the exact same score there as the Shadow Demon with an 11, which does mean that the Plasmoid Boss will be going second, as the Shadow Demon pulls away in pole position. Again, thanks to its slightly higher modifier. Of course, the Plasmoid Boss is +1, only bringing that up to a 12. And so we will be kicking things off right here. The Shadow Demon is going to burst into the air, of course using its 30 feet fly speed, where it will be getting over to the Plasmoid Boss's position, hovering just above ground level, and raking in with the very first umbral claw attack. So Shadow Demon rolling in a +5 to this, looking to beat an AC of 11. And that is an explosive start to this combat with a 13 +5, of course, bringing that up to an 18. Absolutely smashing through the Plasmoid Boss's lackluster defenses. And so we will now be rolling in 3d8 plus 3 points of psychic damage, as we note a very, very quick start to the action in today's battle. So 3d8 plus 3 points of psychic damage rolling in. And that there is a very, very solid looking strike to start off with a maximum of 8 on that first dice, plus a 5 and a 4 for 9. Of course, making for 17 points of damage, plus that 3, which will bring it all the way up to 20 points of damage. However, the Plasmoid Boss is a slippery customer indeed, and will now be using its reaction to use its uncanny dodge ability, thus halving that damage down to just 10 points. A very, very solid strike there from the Shadow Demon, but that has only brought the Plasmoid Boss down from 82 to 72 hit points. And this will show to the Shadow Demon that it does have its work cut out in this battle. And with that, the Shadow Demon will look to fly 5 feet up into the air in order to escape the Plasmoid Boss. And as the creature has already used its reaction, it will be unable to make an opportunity attack here. And with all of that said, we will hand over to the Plasmoid. The Shadow Demon, of course, thinking it is probably out of range here, underestimating the sheer reach of the Plasmoid, which does have a 10-foot reach on its pseudopod attack. Does mean that the Shadow Demon is still in range of that crippling multi-attack. And with that said, that does, of course, mean we will be rolling in with 3 pseudopod attacks now from the Plasmoid Boss. First of which rolling in, again, looks to be an AC of 14, and a 5 plus 6 for 11 will not do it. Second roll coming in, a 19 though. That is much more like it. With that plus 6, of course, bringing that up to a 25. That is a surefire hit. And so we will now be rolling with 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage. That's a 1 and a 4 for 5, plus 4 for 9. And again, as we know, the Shadow Demon does have resistance to bludgeoning damage, and so that will be halved and rounded down to make for 4 damage only, dropping the Shadow Demon from 66 to 62 hit points. And now rolling in for that last pseudopod attack. Plasmoid Boss looking to do some more damage here. And with an 8 plus 6 for 14, it has just about managed to make it happen, landing dead on the AC of the Shadow Demon there, which does mean we can roll in for some more damage. And another solid strike there with a 6 and a 2 on the die, totaling 8, plus that 4-point modifier, which is going to bring that all the way up to 12 points of damage. But once again, the Shadow Demon's resistance will weigh in hard here, which will reduce that down to just 6 points of damage. Does mean that at the end of the round, the Shadow Demon ends on 56 HP. And with all that, the Plasmoid is going to look around. It's going to notice a cage behind it. Bars, of course, usually having been designed to not allow creatures through, but the Plasmoid will be using its amorphous ability here to back away from the Shadow Demon and squeeze through the gaps, allowing it to enter the cage, where it will hopefully plan on forcing the Shadow Demon to come back down into range with it, making things a little bit more difficult. And of course, as the Plasmoid Boss was more than 5 feet away, the Shadow Demon will not be able to make an opportunity attack. These two creatures are both huge on the defensive. Does mean that this could be a very interesting battle. And with that in mind, we do hand back over to the Shadow Demon, the spite boiling through its very being as it notices the Plasmoid Boss's strategy. These two creatures both matching each other on intelligence levels, and the Shadow Demon is going to take no nonsense from this, and is going to use its very own ability to fly down into range with the Plasmoid Boss, using its incorporeal movement to simply phase through the bars of the Plasmoid Boss's protective cage, where it will once again initiate an Umbral Claw attack. So rolling in a +5 to this yet again. And a 4 plus 5 for 9 is not going to cut it, even with the Plasmoid Boss's meager 11 AC. And with that, the Shadow Demon is going to remain in range this time, within the confines of those bars, turning this into what is effectively a cage match right here. Definitely a first for Dungeons and Death battles. It has weighed up its options. It knows that it doesn't have enough movement to fully break away from the Plasmoid Boss and its multi-attack next turn. And considering it failed to make its strike count, Plasmoid did not need to make an uncanny dodge, meaning it has its reaction still open for an opportunity attack, something that the Shadow Demon does not want to have to deal with additionally. And with that, we will be handing back over to the Plasmoid, which is going to continue on with its strategy of ground and pound, lashing towards the Shadow Demon with its amorphous might. So first of 3 multi-attacks rolling in, and that is a 7 plus 6 for 13, which is just under the threshold to hit. Second attack rolling in, and an 11 plus 6 for 17 is more like it, as we once again roll in with 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage. And a 6 and a 3 for 9, plus 4 for 13 is a solid strike there, which of course is going to be halved and rounded down for 6 points of damage, which will leave the Shadow Demon on 50 hit points as we roll in for that third attack. And that is a 16 plus 6 for 22. Another strike lands upon the Shadow Demon as we roll in once again. 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage, with a 3 and a 2 for 5, plus 4 for 9. Should be halved and rounded down once again for 4 more points of damage, leaving the Shadow Demon on 46 hit points as another 10 points of damage gets dealt this round. But with that, the Plasmoid Boss doesn't really have anywhere to go, as it is currently backed in against a wall. Again, potentially a strategy of its own making. And with that, we will hand back over to the Shadow Demon, which is just going to continue on with its strategy for now of slashing in with its Umbral Claws. So once again, a +5 to this. It is looking to make an attack count this time. We're rolling in, looking to beat that AC of 11. and a 17 plus 5 for 22 is more than enough to do that. In fact, going so far as to double the AC requirement there, as it now gets to throw in with those 3d8 plus 3 points of psychic damage yet again. We're looking for some big damage here from the Shadow Demon, as the Plasmoid Boss does find itself pinned and cornered. But 2 1s on those d8 is terrible output, and that is only going to total 2, with that 4 dragging that up to a 6. Of course, plus 3. Making sure that finishes on a very meager 9 points of damage from the Shadow Demon in comparison to that previously rolled 20. And the Plasmoid Boss is going to note that this output of damage has felt significantly less than previous instances, and is now going to elect to choose to ignore to use its uncanny dodge, just on the off chance that the Shadow Demon decides to attempt to leave its range. And as it has not used any of its movement yet this round, it is going to fly 30 feet up into the air, boosting through the top of that cage, back out into the open space of the arena above. But of course, the Plasmoid will now be making an opportunity attack as the Shadow Demon leaves its combat. So rolling in once again, a plus 6, looking to be an AC of 14. And it looks like the Shadow Demon's gamble has paid off here, as the Plasmoid Boss just whiffs that strike, missing the AC of 14 by 1 point. That's 7 plus 6, only totaling 13. And with that, we will hand over to the Plasmoid's turn, which can do nothing else other than to choose to run back out of that cage, using its amorphous ability to wedge itself through those bars and grates once more, where it will enter the Grand Arena once again, as it taunts the Shadow Demon to come back and fight it in close combat. And the Shadow Demon is absolutely going to oblige this request, and as we hand over to its turn, it is going to fly back down into range with the Plasmoid Boss, which will, this round at least, force it to use most of its movement speed to get into combat, where it will strike through once again with those umbral claws. 2 is going to do absolutely nothing, even with that plus 5 bringing it all the way up to a 7. This has not been the Shadow Demon's greatest show, that's for sure, and it knows full well, and even if it uses the rest of its 10 feet of movement here to get out of what would usually be combat range, Plasmoid Boss will still be able to weigh in with 3 pseudopod attacks, plus an additional opportunity attack. So the Shadow Demon is going to remain put where it is, preparing itself ready for the brunt of 3 more bludgeoning power fists. Speaking of which, we do hand over to Plasmoid Boss, and we'll be rolling in with that first attack. And once again, a 17 plus 6 right there for 23 points. For 23, is going to bust through the Shadow Demon's defenses. First block of damage rolling in. We have a 5 and a 2 for 7, plus that 4 for 11 points. Will be halved and rounded down to just 5. Second attack rolling in. And then 11 plus 6, once again, is going to make for 17, which is again going to strike through. More damage again, with a 2 and a 3 for 5, plus 4 for 9. Getting halved and rounded down to 4. And that last strike rolling in, can the Plasmoid Boss make 3 for 3? And there it is, with a 16 plus 6 for 22. It most certainly can. And we were rolling in those final points of damage. 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage again, with a 2 and a 4 for 6, plus 4 for 10 total. Once again, halved down to 5. No need for rounding down here, which will have dropped the Shadow Demon from 46 to 32 hit points as a result of those pummeling strikes. And the Plasmoid Boss is going to be feeling pretty happy with its position right here as it showboats in the center of the arena. Shadow Demon, not so much. But we will once again hand over to the Shadow Demon's turn, where it will be striking him with its Umbral Claw. Again, looking to be that AC of 11. And the Shadow Demon is making this look like an absolutely mammoth task to achieve, with a 4 plus 5 only totaling 9. Maybe there's a reason that this particular Shadow Demon was in fact destroyed in its normal demon form, as it would be nice to see it land an attack sooner or later. But the Shadow Demon is going to curse under its breath here, and is going to roll in with its newest strategy, which does involve flying up and out of the Plasmoid Boss's reach, which will heavily reduce its ability to make attacks. And as the Shadow Demon leaves melee range, Plasmoid Boss will absolutely be making an opportunity attack. See if it can get this one in too. And with a 19 plus 5 right there for 24, that is of course going to be landing in, as we chuck yet more damage in the Shadow Demon's direction. With a 6 and a 3 for 9, plus that 4, pulling that up to 13 points of damage, which will be halved and rounded down to 6, but does leave the Shadow Demon on 26 hit points as a result of that reaction strike. The Shadow Demon is currently hovering just out of reach of the Plasmoid Boss, currently around 15 feet away as it ends its turn. We do hand over to the Ooze, which has noted the behavior of the Shadow Demon and is not overly pleased, but it does feel like it's got the upper hand, and as a creature that relies on standing its ground in combat situations, it is going to use this to its advantage here, and is once again just simply going to goad the Shadow Demon. Its ability to intimidate foes coming in handy here. Not that this has any bearing or weight on the combat itself, as we do hand over to the Shadow Demon, which will be flying back into range once again, striking through with an Umbral Claw. And this time it does at least make the strike with an 11 plus 5 for 16. As we roll in yet again with 3d8 plus 3 points of psychic damage. Let's see what the Shadow Demon can do. And it's pretty poor as well, with 2 2s for 4 plus 1 for 5, with that 3 bringing that up to 8 points of damage. And again, the Plasmoid Boss doesn't really feel like this is too much of a threat to it right now, and as such is going to take that on the chin, dropping from 63 to 55 hit points, not using its uncanny dodge now as it winds up and prepares to make another opportunity attack. As yet again, the Shadow Demon uses the final 15 feet of its movement to fly back out of the range of the Plasmoid Boss in hopes it will be avoiding those 3 pseudopod attacks, but it will of course right here be taking that opportunity attack as the Plasmoid Boss swings in yet again. And that is a 17 plus 6 again for 23 total. Does mean a nice tasty serving of 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage is once again headed the Shadow Demon's way. Plasmoid Boss rolling through. And a 6 and a 4 on the dice. That is more like it. Of course, those dice totaling 10 plus that 4 for 14 points of bludgeoning damage, which will be straight half down to 7, which will drop the Shadow Demon from 26 to 19 hit points. And it does look like a combat loop has emerged right here, with the Shadow Demon continuing on with its strategy, where it will once again fly down using 15 feet of its movement, striking in again with those umbral claws. And I wish I was making this up, but the Shadow Demon has rolled in with a 4 again. 4 plus 5, only totaling 9, which is under the Plasmoid Boss's AC of 11. The dice really do tell a story sometimes, and this time it seems to be the story of a Shadow Demon that just can't punch. And I would imagine it's feeling pretty disappointed with itself. The spectators looking on, anyone from the Hells, will likely be judging this creature with some kind of contempt right now. Plasmoid Boss, of course, doesn't need to weigh in with an uncanny dodge, and instead is able to punch forth once again with an opportunity attack as it looks to put the Shadow Demon out of its misery as quickly as possible. And with a 14 plus 6 for 20, the Plasmoid Boss is going to show the Shadow Demon just how it's done. Rolling in with some more bludgeoning damage, plus 4 modifier. And a 5 and a 2 for 7, plus 4 for 11 is going to be a decent strike once again. We, of course, be half down to 5. Take the Shadow Demon from 19 to 14 hit points. But the Incorporeal Demon is not going to quit that easily, and is, of course, going to continue on until the job is done. Once again, flying back down into range, continuing on with that loop. Plus 5 here, looking to beat that AC of 11. And finally, it's done it. An 18 on the dice. Plus 5, bringing that up to a 23, which will finally hit the Plasmoid Boss as it rakes in again with 3d8 plus 3 points of psychic damage. And that is more like it, with 2 5s for 10 plus 7 for 17. Topping up with that 3 to yet again make for 20 points of damage. And this is going to hit the Plasmoid Boss very hard indeed. But with 55 hit points remaining, it does still feel like it has hit points to spare and will be taking that damage on the chin in order to make another opportunity attack for itself. And that tactical maneuver there will be dropping the Plasmoid from 55 to 35 hit points. A very risky play. Let's see if it pays off for him. As the Shadow Demon leaves the area of combat and once again invokes an opportunity attack from the Plasmoid Boss. Again, a plus 6 to this. It is possibly quite a crucial moment in this combat here. And with a 15 plus 6 for 21, it looks like the Plasmoid has made contact, but would it be able to do enough damage to make up for the Shadow Demon's absolute haymaker there? And with a 5 and a 1 for 6, plus 4 for 10, will once again be halved and rounded down for 5, which will drop the Shadow Demon into single digits from 14 to 9 hit points. And as we go on, the Shadow Demon's use of flight and its resistances is proving to be its clutch point here. We do hand over to the Shadow Demon, which is going to employ the same strategy once again, flying 15 feet back down into range, getting in there with the Plasmoid Boss. Umbral Claw attack coming through, and a 9 plus 5 for 14 will do it again. The Shadow Demon possibly may have just been baiting the Plasmoid Boss into a false sense of security as it swings in with yet another claw attack. And with a 4 and a 6 on those d8s there for 10, plus 8 for 18, with that 3 topping it up to 21 points of psychic damage. That is going to be simply too much for the Plasmoid Boss to ignore, and it will have to take Uncanny Dodge as a reaction in order to have that down to 10 points of damage, which will drop the Plasmoid from 35 to 25 hit points as the late stage of this battle seems to just be getting more and more exciting. And the Shadow Demon will once again be leaving the range of the Plasmoid Boss, which does not have a reaction to spare on an opportunity attack this time, as it becomes clear that the creature has simply been relying on the Shadow Demon's incompetence in the previous rounds. That time is quite possibly over. And the Plasmoid Boss is once again going to employ strategy here, and it's going to maneuver itself back into the cage using its full 30 feet to escape the range of the Shadow Demon. And as we hand over to the Fiend, it will be very cunningly using only half of its movement to creep towards the Plasmoid Boss, which does seem to have baited it into a bit of an awkward position here. Shadow Demon weighs up its options, but has decided that another particularly strong strike like that could end the Plasmoid Boss's career once and for all, but will think better of this and will fly down towards the ground, remaining just 15 feet above the surface of the arena, just out of reach of the Plasmoid Boss, which is going to stalemate itself inside that cage. But putting pride aside, the Plasmoid is not going to let the Shadow Demon outshine it in the bravery capacity, and it is going to break from its cover, noting that the Shadow Demon seems to know what its strategy is, and will set itself back up in the center of the arena, just underneath the Shadow Demon as it prepares to do combat once again. And we hand over to the Shadow Demon. It will fly back down into melee combat with the Plasmoid Boss, making yet another Umbral Claw attack. But there it is once again. It does seem that the Plasmoid Boss, its intimidating assault right here as it dashes towards the Shadow Demon, has done something, as the creature only rolls in with a 4 again. That +5 again, that +5 only topping it up to a 9, which does mean that as the Shadow Demon leaves range once again, Plasmoid Boss is able to swing in with an opportunity attack, which with a 12 + 6 for 18 is certainly going to strike home. And so 2d6 + 4 points of bludgeoning damage coming in hot. And that is a 6 and a 2 for 8 + 4 for 12. Will once again be halved down to 6 points of damage, which does leave the Shadow Demon on the threads of life. Just 3 hit points remaining. This has truly been an epic battle, and it looks to have come down to these final moments here. And again, the Plasmoid Boss can do nothing but watch and prepare for the Shadow Demon to come back down into range, as the Shadow Demon flies in to make yet another attack. A good hit here could be all it needs. Shadow Demon rolling in, +5 to this. And it is a 16 + 5 for 21, which is going to connect. Does mean 3d8 + 3 points of psychic damage coming through. Let's see what it can do. 25 points remaining on the Plasmoid Boss. And that is a decent strike again, with a 6 and a 4 for 10, +3 for 13, topped up by that +3 modifier for 16 total. And the Plasmoid Boss, once again, knowing that the end is drawing close, is going to avoid using its uncanny dodge in favor of making that opportunity attack as the demon leaves range. But that strike will have dropped it from 25 to 9 hit points, as this battle really does begin to come down to the wire. But this is a very, very crucial moment in the battle, as the Shadow Demon once again leaves range, provoking the Plasmoid Boss's opportunity attack. Is it all going to be over here? Which creature is going to take it? This roll could very well be the decider of that question. Plasmoid Boss rolling in with an opportunity attack, looking to beat that AC of 14. And with a 14 on the dice, the Plasmoid Boss has managed to make it work, with that +6 bringing that all the way up to a 20. But with the demon's resistance, can the Plasmoid Boss deal enough damage with these dice? Rolling in. Very, very critical roll here for the Plasmoid Boss. 2d6 + 4 points of bludgeoning damage versus the Shadow Demon. And that is it. A 2 and a 5 for 7, plus that 4 modifier, bringing that all the way up to 11 points of damage, is going to mean that the Shadow Demon is dropped from 3 hit points down to 0. And with a baleful screech, the demon finds its incorporeal form completely dissipated by the Plasmoid Boss, which does bring an end to this incredibly back and forth combat. The Plasmoid Boss only finishing with 9 hit points in a battle that really could have gone either way. Very, very tactically played from both sides. But of course, the end result is what we see before our very eyes, with the Plasmoid Boss taking victory over the Shadow Demon and rising through into the quarterfinals of the CR4 League. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed this battle. If you did, please consider dropping a like, commenting down below, and subscribing to the channel. And I hope you'll join me again next time when the Black Pudding takes on the Yuan Ti Nightmare Speaker in yet another CR4 qualifying round. And I do also have a Patreon which has both free and paid tiers, which hosts various different bits and pieces, so be sure to go and check that out too. And other than that, thank you once again very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one very soon.